Commissioner Atkinson.
And thank you, I want to say thank you also for the work that's been done on the task force. I think this is tremendously important to get the funding we need to satisfy so many of the unfunded mandates that we do have with ODFW. One of the questions I had in looking through the materials that we were sent from the task force is related to the funding allocation. If there is a funding source that the legislature determines will be available to ODFW, how much will the task force be involved in determining where that funding will go, and what maybe this is a question for Kurt, what the role of the commission will be in that decision as well?
Well, I'll give you my perspective. Our charge by the legislature is to come back with funding alternatives. We asked the department for 4 levels of funding, current service level plus deferred maintenance, and all the way up to implementing full mission. So we know what the dollar amounts are, but in my opinion, that's up to the legislature and the budget process to determine exactly how the money is going to be allocated. That's not our charge. So we will try to find the dollars that will be supported by the legislature. It will be up to the legislative budget process to determine how to distribute those dollars if they're approved through your normal budget process.
And Kurt, did you have any information too about, because it seemed like there was a general idea early on that this funding would be for conservation, would also include recreation, education, access to fish and wildlife resources for non-traditional groups. How will that all be sorted out?
Yeah, Chair Finley and Commissioner Atkinson, Commissioner Laphart is entirely correct. As I think I said it, maybe that's the last or 2 task force meetings ago, there's a lot of sausage to be made between, in the budget process between now or between any funding recommendation and actually development of the expenditure plans, if you will. Ultimately, it will be a legislative. The legislature, as they do right now, they write our budget, and we provide a recommendation to the governor. The governor provides a recommendation to the legislature, but ultimately the legislature writes our budget, tells us how to expend our resources and where we should have 10 positions or 12 positions. That's all legislatively controlled. So part of it depends on timing. If a funding recommendation is made and then it's prior to our budget development process, we might actually have a governor's recommended budget that goes to the legislature built on that revenue, or it may end up simply in the legislative process, just like, for instance, we got new general fund for Marine Reserves work several biennia ago, and the legislature ultimately writes the budget and tells us how to spend that, whether, how many positions are related to science versus human dimensions work. There's a lot of work to go on not only between now and actually getting a new funding source, but also a lot of work to go on between getting the new funding source and determining how it's spent. We made our the task force asked the department early on, I know I'm retreading old ground here, but early on the task force said, well, we need to know what our target is. We don't know whether we're looking for $10 million or $100 million. And so they asked us, the agency, show us, here's some things, and Chair Laphart talked about them, or maybe it was Jim, I don't remember which, but here are some things that we want you to tell us how you would implement and what it would cost. Some of those were very easy exercises. The status quo, replacing the 3rd step of the fee increase, the 2020 fee increase, very easy analysis. We already knew what that costed, or what that cost was. As far as developing and fully implementing the agency mission and the conservation strategy, that's not an easy task, but we actually handed it out to staff and said, you developed a program. We're not going to tell you what the dollar figure is. We're not going to tell you it can't be more than 10 million, or we're not going to tell you it can't be more than any amount. Develop the program as we would recommend implementing it, and be reasonable, but no artificial caps. So that's what we did. That was about I want to say it was about an $80 million, $80 or $85 million total package, including deferred maintenance, including conservation strategy implementation, including branding and marketing, all those things rolled up.
Well, just a follow-up to Commissioner Atkinson's question. So how clear will it be to the legislature our intent for these funds to be directed toward conservation? I mean, that's our momentum and that's our original intent. So when they get a hold of this money, I mean, how much discretion does the legislature have? Does that extend beyond what our intent is for these funds to really solely be directed toward conservation and conservation strategy and our original proposals of why we're doing this?
Well, the short answer is the legislature has full discretion. And even if there's state law that says a particular funding source can only be used for activity X, they can always, there's the most powerful word in statutory processes is notwithstanding. So we can always add the one word, notwithstanding ORS 496-270, we're going to spend these funds this way. So they have full discretion. That's their role. We have, I think I'm very confident that if we and the task force develops a proposal and a program, that they're not going to take that proposal and say, okay, we're spending it all on hatcheries. I'm fairly confident that's not going to happen. As far as what proportion is in education versus marketing versus conservation strategy, yeah, there's discretion there. Definitely.
If I could, I can tell you Senator Edwards, I think, has attended every meeting, and he chairs, the Senate committee. Representative Helm, I think, has attended every meeting. Representative Whitsitt and Krieger are not running again, but Representative Whitsitt's been at almost every meeting. I know Representative Brad Witt extremely well, and he's very, very interested in this. So they're going to listen pretty closely to at least the proposal for the legislative committee, and I think the director is correct. I think they'll be very supportive of the process, and hopefully it's still going to be a heavy lift. I don't want to try to, it's going to be a heavy lift. We're going to try to do the best we can, but it's going to be a heavy lift. Okay, thank you.
I would just say to the commissioners and to the audience that we have tried to reawaken and refocus in the public arena the non-game program. In many people's minds, ODF&W relates to the taking of fish and wildlife, and that's a portion of its mission. The other portion is non-game species, and that's a huge, even bigger portion of the environment. You saw on the public survey, one of the highest rating things was ecological relationships and values. That relates to watchable wildlife. That relates to stewardship. There's an obligation on behalf of the state, it's in the statute, to manage Oregon's fish and wildlife for future generations. And we really haven't emphasized that, but that's the role. It's not just the taking of fish and wildlife. That's important, that's recreational, that's cultural value. We're supposed to be managing for Oregonians who are not yet born. Just as you and I arrived in this state, we inherited a management regime and an environment based on those who preceded us. So we should never forget the stewardship role. And that's why it's important for all Oregonians to pay into this. We have an obligation, statutory, and we have an ethical and moral responsibility for those who follow us. And I don't think we should ever forget that. So any more questions? Commissioner Atkinson.
I'm just wondering, as the policy-making board of ODFW, can we send a statement to the legislature about what our perspective is on the need for funding? Because I think that there is a strong feeling among our commission, and maybe once we all talk about it, it wouldn't be true, but that we really are focused on the conservation piece for this funding. Would it be appropriate to?
Yes, it's appropriate, and we'll do it if you want to. Yeah, we'll take some leadership on that. I'll be glad to communicate that.
I'd like to just close with, for the commission to thank Chair Finley and the director. They've been at almost every meeting, if not at every meeting, on the phone, listening in and participating. So, and I know Chair Finley is a busy person also. For him to make the time as chair of the commission to be one of our ex officio members is very much appreciated. It's Kurt's job, so he has to be there, but Chair Finley doesn't have to, but he has, and I want to thank you personally for your time.
It's my job too, as a volunteer. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, thank you.
This has been very good, and you've worked very hard. And where's Roger Furman? Roger, stand up. Thank you very much.